All right, guys, now we're going to continue working our attacks from full guard. We're going to move into the Kimura. So we're going to start down in full guard. And now, you see, Brian's in a good posture position. I want to bring his posture towards me, but when I go for the Kimura is normally when somebody braces onto the mat when I stop. So normally what I have to do is clear their wrists in some way, pulling down. Now you see where Brian stopped from coming all the way down by bracing onto the mat. The way that I like to do this one is from the prayer position. So both of my hands are going to come almost like I'm putting them in my pockets in a prayer type position. And now as I do my reverse crunch, I draw a circle, outward circle with both arms. So as we go through one more time, we come underneath, and now when I start to come down, I'm right into wrist control. As opposed to, and not that it's wrong, if I peel off, boom, or do a 2-on-1, trying to move off, I feel like this kind of rolls right into the wrist control position. Now, as I start to go for my Kimura, I'm going to attack the arm where I have wrist control of, and my entire body is going to be on that side of Brian. So I hook my leg into his hips on that same side as I open my guard, and I'm going to plant my leg down towards the mat so my foot is nice and flat with my knee tight towards his body. From here, I'm going to sit up so that I'm going to look to bring my chest right into his shoulder as I sit up towards my elbow. Now when we do this, there's 2 points of contact with the mat. My hips are no longer on the mat. I'm bringing my hips up and over top of my body, bringing my hips nice and tight into them. The crease of my elbow is going to come right into his armpit, and I try to lock up my wrists if possible. A lot of times, though, it's going to be out of reach. So I don't force that grip. I'll do this grip in motion a lot of times. So what I'm going to look to do is I'm going to bump in ever so slightly, and now without my back touching the mat again, I'm going to rotate my body. So right now, the hip on the same side that I have wrist control is bladed down towards the mat. As I hip in, I'm going to try to rotate my body towards the outside in order to get my body in the proper angle, proper position. When we do this in transition, I'm looking to lock up my Kimura grip. So we'll go through one more time with it. It's tough to do slow, but as I break down, I'm going to look to sit up, and now my elbow is pinching right towards the armpit. As I do my hip exchange, and I bring my hips through, I look to lock up my Kimura grip. So the next part of this is going to be our finish. My leg position right now, I've seen it finished from a full guard by locking guard back up. And I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that. Me personally, I like to plant my leg onto the mat and have a tight pinch with my knee towards his hip. So we'll show this from another angle so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. Now, my other leg is going to be going right across his back, biting my heel almost right above his hip onto the far side. That's going to keep control of him. So from here, we're going to look to attack his arm. One thing I like to do personally is I'll open my hips slightly and punch his arm to the inside of my leg. That stops, my leg sometimes can get in the way of a block, or he can start straightening his arm out, which we'll go into what to do from there at some point. But now it kind of keeps that nice acute angle locked into the arm. Now it's about target isolation. We've got our angle created and we're controlling his posture. The way that I like to isolate my target is I pay close attention towards my elbow on the thread arm. So as I come over, I grab my wrist. I'm going to hug that elbow tight on top of his shoulder so it really keeps it pinned towards my ribs. The last part with this, I don't want to get too armsy where I'm extending away. 2 things happen. One, a lot of times, not very often, but sometimes, the guy's stronger than I am. And he stops me from being able to push up just by using strength. The other is if I start pushing with my arms, it makes it easy for the person to straighten their arm, and that gives more range of motion in their shoulder. You see right now, the straighter the arm is, the more Brian can move it around comfortably. So if we keep that nice acute angle, what I do instead is I start hipping out, and I'm going to bring my shoulder up, and I'm going to start pushing his arm, almost like I'm trying to push it towards the back of his head. Again, not pushing up using our arm strength, using our whole body in order to finish. So we'll go ahead and show that again. Starting in full guard, I'm gonna go towards my prayer position, coming underneath his wrists. Now as I do my reverse crunch, I'm gonna do an outward circle with both hands. And I get my wrist control. From here, I hook my heel towards his hips and chop down my leg onto the other side. That counterbalance is gonna allow me to sit up. And now here's another thing is, avoid the temptation of having to look at your partner. I think we have a good angle of my hips right now. So right now, looking at Brian keeps my hips towards the floor. Look over the shoulder that your elbow is posted. That makes it easier to keep your hips off of the mat. So I can really engage my hips and push them into Brian right now. My arm on the other side is gonna snake down so the crease of my elbow catches his armpit. And now I'm gonna hip in, and then I do my hip exchange. As I do my hip exchange, I'm gonna look to get my connection with the Kimura. Like so. As you see, my foot is not down towards the mat, not being lazy with it. I don't prefer to lock my guard. I'm gonna get an interior rotation and get my foot flat on the mat. The reason why I like this is sometimes we need to adjust our hips. When I'm in my guard, I feel like I'm pretty stationary. But when I have my foot on the mat, I can move around if need be. So we have an acute angle. I'm gonna open up my knee just at the hip. I'm gonna point my knee away, put his wrist towards the inside, and then close it back off to keep that acute angle the entire time. I also wanna isolate the target. I take my elbow and I hug it down towards my ribs. That's keeping that guy nice and tight. I still try to keep a pinch pushing down onto his wrist to make that a nice acute angle as we go to finish. It's gonna really limit his range of motion. Lastly, I'm picking my shoulder on the far side off the mat and trying to push his hand towards the back of his head. That's the Kimura from full guard.